It was interesting because there was an inner conflict, I think, sort of happening within myself that I didn't realize at first. One was I'm preparing myself in wanting to be that principal clarinetist, let's say, for an orchestra, studying with one of the greatest principal clarinetists out there, in Ricardo Morales. And I'm also looking into arts administration. So it's onstage versus, offstage. That's when I realized that, I may be falling out of love with one thing and falling in love with another. And it wasn't like a light switch, right? It took time for this to organically just take place. But I came to the realization at the time that this is what I want to pursue. I think I'm ready to make that leap.
And welcome to the Orchestrating Your Career podcast. I'm your host, Rebecca for short, and I'm a clarinetist who studied at the Eastman School of Music and then went to London to get my master's and PhD, both at the Guildhall School of Music and Drama. Having shifted pathways in my own life, I love hearing about the varied careers musicians can have and how they got there. And that's precisely what we're exploring in this podcast, as I sit down with music graduates to chat about their unique musical journeys, hear their hard-earned wisdom, and learn about how they're orchestrating their own careers. For today's episode, I had the pleasure of chatting with Fabian Fuertes. At the time of our interview, Fabian was Senior Manager of Youth Orchestra Los Angeles, also known as YOLA, the LA Philharmonic's music education program. He now serves as YOLA's Gift Planning Officer. Fabian studied clarinet performance, getting his undergraduate degree at Florida State University and his master's at the University of Texas at Austin, and then went to Philadelphia to study with Ricardo Morales at Temple University. He held jobs in music administration, working for the Philadelphia Orchestra, the Aspen Music Festival, and Oberlin College before moving to Los Angeles to work with YOLA. Fabian tells his story of moving from a career pathway in performance to falling in love with music administration. It's inspiring to see how appreciative he is of the mentors who have made such a difference in his life, and how he's now taking on leadership and mentorship roles to help young people on their own journeys. While I normally end each podcast episode with a performance from the guest, Fabian requested instead that I share this 2-minute video titled "What is YOLA? An overview of our young symphony of change," which beautifully summarizes the mission and impact of Youth Orchestra Los Angeles. Stay tuned till the end of the episode for that. And now let's get right into the interview. Welcome, Fabian Fuertes, to the Orchestrating Your Career podcast. Thank you so much for coming on.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. It's amazing to have the opportunity to get to chat to you. You are the Senior Manager for YOLA, Youth Orchestra Los Angeles, which is an incredible program that makes social change through music education.
Yes.
And I'm really excited to hear more about that program, the work that you're doing through it, and also just your journey to getting here to where you are now. Could you just start us off by sharing how you first got into classical music? I know you're a fellow clarinet player, so how did you end up playing the clarinet?
Oh my goodness. Well, it first started in 4th grade.
Okay.
And at this point, I was living in Southern California. I'm a native Angelino. And I had a crush on a young girl named Jennifer Blogg. And we were both in 4th grade, and she played the clarinet. And so since she played the clarinet, I needed to play the clarinet. And I went to my parents, and I begged and pleaded, and they finally came around to getting me a student model. It was a plastic Selmer clarinet that they rented from the musical store. And so I had signed up for band and was very excited. I was with friends, and the first day of band, I recall, trying to put the instrument together, but you don't really know how to do that because there's so many different parts. But I'm also looking around, and I don't see her. And so I asked one of my friends at the time, "Have you seen Jennifer? Where is she?" And it turned out that she quit.
Oh, no.
So how ironic that she quit the clarinet, and now I had, I'm stuck with this, right? I have to use it because I begged my parents for it. And so in any case, it just came natural. And I think, in general, things that come natural and you're good at, you tend to enjoy. And so I really enjoyed that. And what I would later find out is how beneficial it was in providing a connection to meet with other people. I know this wasn't a part of your question, but it honestly, something that might be helpful to know is I moved around quite a bit when I was young, almost every 2 to 3 years. Born in Hollywood, lived in LA, Monrovia, Chino Hills, Montana. And then when my father passed, who raised me, we moved to Tampa, Florida. And throughout this time, I didn't have any siblings. So, you're a young person, especially once you get to like middle school and high school, you're finding yourself. You have to try and make friends. And music was that connector for me. It helped provide me with a community, helped provide me with something that I had in common with, other folks at the schools I went to. And fortunately, at the public schools I attended, they had an arts program, so I could play in band or I could play in orchestra and we could at least share at baseline, hey, we both have this affection or enjoyment for music. And that honestly helped really build friendships and then later on a career.
Amazing. I love that you were already pulling out that connection, community, commonality theme. I think that's so important to so many musicians. It's a big reason why a lot of people, I think, find a lot of joy and inspiration in music. It's because of the other people in it. And I also love your story of how you ended up playing the clarinet, because mine is very similar.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I wanted to play the flute, but my best friend at the time, so not exactly the same, but my best friend wanted to play the clarinet. So she was saying, come play clarinet with me. So I signed up to play the clarinet. Because of her, first day of band class, she's playing the flute.
She switched it up on you.
What happened? And I was like, I'm stuck with the clarinet now, but it worked out. So, these things, there's a reason for them.
Just happened naturally, yes.
Sorry.
Hi, no problem. That was Amy, one of our French horn players with the orchestra with LA Phil.
Ooh.
Amy Jo Ryan, she's fabulous.
Amazing, I'm sure, yeah. It's an incredible orchestra.
Yes.
So cool that you're working on such an incredible project with them. But we'll get to that. So you're doing music in schools, getting really involved in different things. How then did you decide music was a potential career, something that you wanted to pursue as, a major in college?
Great question. Well, what's interesting is if I didn't go into music, I probably would have went into engineering. I really enjoyed that as well, and around high school. But this goes back to, again, the community that music was able to provide. When I went to high school, I went to Howard W. Blake High School. It was a performing arts school, and this was in Tampa, Florida. I remember getting encouraged to apply and audition because it was pretty new, like brand new at the time. This was class of 2003. And so I think they were open up for maybe a few years. And when I went there, I was able to be in band. I was able to be in orchestra. I had friends that introduced me to being in a youth orchestra. So I was able to build friendships in these different ensembles. And I learned that you could actually have a career in music. And one of the things that I was encouraged to do, I didn't even know they existed, were these concerto competitions. And this is where you could win a prize of some kind. And so I ended up winning, I think it was like $2,000 for a Tampa Bay Youth Orchestra concerto competition at the time. And that was very helpful to me because we didn't have the means to buy a professional clarinet. So at this point, I'm in high school and I'm still on that same plastic Selmer student clarinet. And I've utilized this since 4th grade.
Yeah.
So that helped me purchase a used buffet R13 clarinet. That was really, really helpful.
Amazing.
And that helped me play even, in a more beautiful way. As you can imagine, more advanced instruments can help you shine, so to speak. And so, that realizing what music could provide, and also learning that it could provide scholarship. My mother migrated over to the U.S. from Guatemala. And I recall, her and I learning what FAFSA was for the first time together, and how to fill out college applications, and gaining guidance from friends or community members about how to get into college. So that was helpful for me. Between academics and between music, I was able to receive scholarship to go to Florida State University. And it was one of the reasons why I went there instead of other schools that I had received admission into, honestly, because of the amount of scholarship I received. The rest I had to get financial aid through Sallie Mae at the time. So, and to this day, I'm still paying off my student loans, getting there. But it provided me the opportunity, honestly. It helped provide me the opportunity to go into college, and would later provide me a career path as well.
I think that's really inspiring that this field of music, I think, can be really difficult to break into because of how expensive it can be. So there's that side of it. But then there's the other side that you also discovered of it providing opportunities for you, and it being able to offer scholarship and things that maybe wouldn't have been open to you otherwise. So I feel like there's these two sides of the coin of, the challenges of music, but also a lot of what it can offer. And I really appreciate you sharing that. What was your experience like studying in undergrad? You were doing clarinet performance.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I was in Tallahassee, Florida at this point, and it was really, really great. Honestly, I really enjoyed the teachers I had in Dr. Deborah Bish, I should say, and Frank Kowalski as well. They were both really, really supportive in my growth, not only as a musician, but just as a young person, I would say, becoming an adult. I also attended a school that also had a rich history in athletics. So I got to go see Division I athletes play in football or basketball or baseball or these different things. And, it's interesting. I found these parallels in the way both an athlete and a musician prepare for performance. And so that's when I started to learn a bit more about what performance, preparing for performance could look like, what performance anxiety is. I remember first learning about The Inner Game of Tennis, that book that really helps you, understand the different voices that sort of are in your mind, and how just the mental challenges that can be presented in preparing for this moment where you're going to perform, whether it's in an ensemble setting with others, whether it's a chamber ensemble, whether it's a soloist or a solo or an audition, right? You are preparing for those minutes you have on stage. So that was helpful for me to actually see how these athletes prepare for this moment where some of them are on the big stage of being on national TV, for example, right? And seeing those parallels and having that help inform me on how I can better prepare myself as well as a musician.
Did you have thoughts or ideas when you entered university of what you wanted to get out of your degree, what you were thinking about after graduating, thoughts on career pathway at that point?
I think at that point, in my undergrad, I believe the dream was performing, being on stage, being first clarinet in a major orchestra, any orchestra really. I think that was the dream at that point. I had taught a few private lessons, but it's not as though I had a big studio. I later had a much larger studio and a lot more experience in education and adjudication and things like that later on in my career. But at that point in undergrad, you're green, you're growing, you're young, and you're shooting for the stars. So at that point, I'd love to be principal clarinet with LA Phil.
Yes.
Why not?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, why not?
Sure.
Dream big.
Yeah.
So then throughout your training, throughout that undergraduate experience, did that dream shift at all at that point? And what were your ideas about coming after? Were you thinking masters? Were you thinking of taking auditions, going for LA Phil? What were you thinking?
Yeah. I realized right around my junior, senior year that I needed more training. I knew, I'm happy that I had the awareness that I wasn't quite there in comparison to the incredible musicians that held the positions that they had in these major orchestras, right? And so I was like, hey, I need to more practice, right? Let's put in another 10,000 hours, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so decided to apply for different opportunities, and then once again decided to choose one of the schools where I got the most support in being able to attend, which was University of Texas, where I got to study with Richard McDowell and Nathan Williams and work with a lot of great educators out there. Robert Duke in particular, gosh, he's such a great educator. And Jerry Junkin as well, conductor with the Wind Ensemble and the Dallas Winds. He was really instrumental in helping build my artistry and with my teachers. And gosh, Bob Duke, man, I was able to take this class where we started videotaping one another in our teaching. And what, wow, that was so educational because you really got to see what you were doing well, where you had room for improvements, and where you needed to make changes. Because, hey, you need to figure out how to teach something 10 different ways, and are you meeting the student where they're at or not? And I really objectively got to see my strengths and my lesser strengths and blind spots and things. And he was able to help cultivate a classroom where we built trust and we were able to collaborate on being able to help each other and how we could support not only our artistry as musicians, but as mentors and teachers for others. And I think that was very instrumental in helping me get that much more into teaching. So then I started teaching with a couple school districts as a private lessons teacher. And in Texas, oh my gosh, do they push private lessons in their programs? Wow, beautiful. And so I remember applying for a couple different positions that I fortunately had the position to receive. And I remember them asking, so how many students can you take on? And I was like, oh, well, I'm doing my master's right now. So obviously I'm that is my main focus, and I'm studying and I'm practicing, but I'm flexible. How many are we thinking? They're like, well, what do you think, like 20, 30, 40? And I was like, whoa, what? And so, I think at one point, I think the highest amount of students I taught was somewhere in the 20s or 30s maybe.
Gosh.
Just because that ended up being like a source of income,
of course,
for not only the cost of living, but again, I was taking financial aid to pursue my master's, so that was very helpful in that. And then, but that's when I also got to get experience in like adjudicating for all county or solo ensemble and all state, those types of things. Give master classes for middle schools or high schools. It was really, really helpful to have those experiences and refine my teaching. So that was a really, really beautiful experience. And then I decided to further my education because I thought, I still need more time. And so at that point, I had a tough decision because the next schools, I'm going to mention two in particular that I got accepted to, was between Temple and Manus, and this was to study with Steve Williamson or Ricardo Morales, and these are two
top
giants in the clarinet world, and I really enjoyed my lessons with them. I got the suggestion from my teacher, hey, if you can have a lesson ahead of time to see if it might be a great fit, do it, go. And thank goodness I had that mentorship to go do that. And I now share that with other students who are looking into prospective teachers, like, see if it's a great fit. It may or may not be, right? And I really enjoyed both. It was really tough. And so I ended up choosing Temple to stay with Ricardo Morales, just because it just seemed like maybe a slightly better fit, and they also helped support me financially as well. And I mean, to be frank, Ricardo was he was number one for me at that point in my life. I mean, he's, in my personal opinion, he still is number one. He's really, really fabulous, and such a great mentor and educator, great at knowing how to challenge you in so many different ways. I mean, he was the first teacher to not only provide me with, let's say, repertoire or ideas to consider, he also assigned books for me to read, learning the history of music and clarinet and the way it was written for throughout the different time periods. And I mean, it was very like, oh my goodness, like it was very academic in addition to the artistic side of things. And so I was surprised to see, so many musicians are tied to, let's say, a certain brand or vendor, right? Or school of thinking, French school, German school, or maybe it's, I'm going to play on buffet clarinets versus summer clarinets, or all those kinds of things, or I'm going to use this type of ligature or mouthpiece. It's all very particular. And I was shocked to see that in his inventory, he had everything. And he had everything because he didn't care. It was like no allegiance to a certain. He wanted to make sure whatever would be the best fit for him and his young people that he was teaching, that's what he was going to have you work on. And he made sure you also had different equipment as well for the different environments. He's like, hey, this is what I would recommend for if you're playing a solo versus you're a soloist with an orchestra, whether you're in a small space, a large space, a dry space, or the opposite. He, like, all these different things that we talked about. And I was like, I had never thought of these things. So he really opened up my eyes and my musical world into the scene of playing music in Philadelphia. That was really, really beautiful.
Yeah. So was this program at Temple an artist diploma or a second graduate degree? Or
second master's.
Second
so
master's.
I had originally applied, I think, for artist diploma, and then he recommended I do a master's instead. I don't know if I should say this out loud, but he also mentioned, he's like, hey, you don't necessarily need to finish. Like, you've got the degree already, but get yourself in the door. And, get yourself over here to Philly and we'll figure out the rest. And so, after that, I mean, after I stopped studying with him through Temple, I kept studying with him privately. He never charged me for a lesson. It was nuts. He's so generous, so generous. I remember I had a student who, I had a studio in Philadelphia, and so I had this student who I saw myself within them, and they were going into college, and they wanted to go into music, and so, and they couldn't really afford like an A clarinet. So I said, you know what, I'll sell you mine, and I'll raise the funds. So I need a new A clarinet anyway. It's down the road. Here, let me do this. And so I told Ricardo about this story, and so he said, "Oh, well, just borrow one of mine until you get the money." And so, "Oh, okay, great, thanks." Incredible. He had extra B flats and extra A's. And down the road after I left Philly, he said, "You sound great on that instrument." And I said, "Thanks so much, and here you go. I really appreciate you borrowing." He said, "Just keep it. You sound great."
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, "What? You're giving me a clarinet?" I mean, it's just, he's incredibly generous. I just to this day, I'll always be indebted to him and his wife Amy is also really incredible and an incredible musician. Really a great mentor to me. I'm very fortunate to have him as a friend in my life.
Yeah, incredible. Yeah, and so amazing that you were able to find that connection, that you were able to go on and study with him and just create that friendship that you now have with him is really beautiful. And I think people like that who are already so great, they're like at the very, very top of the level of the field, but they're still willing to give their time, give their energy, give their resources to other people. I think people like that are just, amazing.
Yeah.
So that's really beautiful. I'm wondering, throughout this whole postgraduate experience of studying from Texas to Philadelphia, what was your thought process on where you saw your career then going? Because you were saying in your undergrad, very performance-based, very performance career focused. But then in Texas, you were doing all these teaching opportunities, really getting involved in that. And then it sounds like your experience in Philadelphia was very eye-opening a lot in terms of your playing, in terms of clarinet playing. So how are you balancing your career prospects of, was teaching coming more into what you envisioned for your future career? How are you thinking about performing? And what was your goal for what you wanted to do when you finished studying at Temple?
So I was in Philadelphia for 5 years, 2009 to 14. First studying, and then working.
Yes.
But that was a pivotal point in a change in my career trajectory. So when I was studying at Temple, I came across the opportunity to look at teaching at a couple different organizations that were LSSM inspired. One is Tune Up Philly, and the other one is Play on Philly.
Yeah.
And so that was the first time that I truly got to work with historically marginalized communities. And I got to see how you could make a positive social change really through the vehicle of music. And that was very eye-opening for me, and it helped me realize, wow, I can make a greater impact in this world through music than by simply, and it's not simply, but then by, performing or teaching in spaces that are a bit more, how do I say, I guess, in spaces where resources already exist, in spaces where maybe folks are a bit more affluent, or there's a status quo where it's just, it's just a part of your, I don't know, socioeconomic status or where you live or the schools you attend. I mean, that was helpful for me to experience because I also understood it. I lived it, you know? I've been both with and without resources in my life. So that was big. And then I started to get a little bit of experience in working in administration, in arts administration, I should say. And that's when I started to think, how can I grow what I'm doing? And I started to dive a little deeper into programming and figuring out, okay, what does it look like to maybe build a program? Like something like Play on Philly, like, what does that even look like? So just that thought made me think, okay, I need to get my foot in the door into arts admin in some capacity, in addition to what I was already doing a bit with my site administration, just helping out the site a bit. And so I had a coffee with Kate Kammerer, I believe. I think it was a coffee or something like that. Maybe it was lunch. Who knows? At the time, I believe she was personnel manager with Philadelphia Orchestra, but she was about to ascend into to being the general manager. And I told her about myself and what I'm currently doing and all those kinds of different things and my aspirations. And she asked if I had any interest in maybe going into orchestra personnel. I said, yeah, tell me more, honestly, so I can learn. And timing is everything, right? So the assistant personnel manager at the time was stepping away. She was about to have another child in her life, and she was also thinking, I think I might step away from my position. So they could use some extra help in the orchestra personnel department. And because your work speaks for itself, you know, and your resume and your past and all your experiences. She thought it might be a great fit if I were interested to come on in as an assistant and help support orchestra personnel there. And so I did. And I was like, hey, this is an opportunity to work with a major orchestra, right? And, you know, it was interesting because there was an inner conflict, I think, sort of happening within myself that I didn't realize at first. One was I'm preparing myself in wanting to be that principal clarinetist, let's say, for an orchestra, studying with one of the greatest principal clarinetists out there, in Ricardo Morales. And I'm also looking into arts administration. So it's Onstage versus, you know, Offstage. And when I started working there, at first, Ricardo was a bit confused, you know, and this is my mentor, you know, my teacher. And he was at first not understanding why I would be going into arts. He's like, you're right there, man. He's like, you know, you're an audition away from being a part of an orchestra or maybe a premier band or something, you know, whatever it may be. And I said, well, you know, this is something that I'm also very excited about and I want to pursue. And I think after working, I think it took several months, honestly, for us to just work with each other and him see me, I guess, shine in this opportunity. And then once that sort of clicked, he then became a lot more supportive of me and realized, oh, this is something he really enjoys. And so he was supporting me, the person, more than the clarinetist at that point. During that time, I was also working with, at the time he was a production manager with Philadelphia Orchestra. His name is Vincent Carbone. He asked me, hey, you know, I see you're like going into arts administration. Have you ever thought about working with, you know, a summer music festival or something like that? Have you ever done anything like that? I said, well, not as an arts administrator, as a clarinetist, absolutely. Yeah. And he said, you should check them out. You know, the Aspens and Tanglewoods of the world, and the NRO and NOIs and all those things. And so I applied for Aspen Music Festival and among others, and fortunately got accepted after the round of interviews. It's a 10-week program. I was the personnel manager for the, I believe they called it ACA at that point. It was like the American Academy of Conducting at Aspen. I think that's what that acronym standard for, yes. I would be the orchestra personnel manager for the ensemble. I would work closely with Astor Santorian, who at the time was the vice president for, I think it was for their artistic department there. And I also got to work with, he's conductor for Atlanta, Spano. Maestro Robert Spano, yes. So I got to work with him for all that time. But sorry, before that, Vincent, going back to Vincent, he said, what about if you don't take your clarinet with you? And I said, what? He said, yeah. He said, if you really want to go to Arts and Man, what might it look like to just be away from your clarinet? I'm so glad he challenged me to do that, because that's when I realized, after I didn't miss it, that, oh, I may be falling out of love with one thing and falling in love with another. And it wasn't like a light switch, right? It took time for this to organically just take place. But I came to the realization at the time, this was in 2014, that this is what I want to pursue. I think I'm ready to make that leap. I really enjoyed my experience working with the ensemble, working with the great musicians there. We had plus the concertmaster was all these great musicians, like concertmaster for Atlanta Symphony and all these other orchestras that would come in, and I was working with all these great conductors from all over the world. It was just a really beautiful experience, and I enjoyed the puzzle of it. I enjoyed working with musicians. I enjoyed that aspect of organizing it. And so I applied to a couple positions. One was with Louisville, Kentucky, to work with them, with the orchestra. I think it was it was interesting. The role was general manager with personnel manager. I think it was tied in one. And the other one was a orchestra and personnel position with Oberlin Conservatory. So one was collegiate, one was with professional orchestra. So I went through the hoops of interviewing for those and fortunately received the opportunity to do both.
Oh, okay.
And so now I was at a crossroads of which career path would I like to pursue. And so I went to my mentors and I went to those who I really trusted. Kate Kamar was one person. Marilyn, she's still personnel manager at Philly too. She's such a great mentor. Anthony Mazaki, who's executive director over for Haven Music Festival, because I had worked there and I went there as a student, and other folks too. I just sort of went for their guidance because I was like, wow, these are like great opportunities. And it was interesting to hear one piece of feedback. I won't say their name since I'm on this podcast, but they mentioned, it might be a conflict of interest to be both the GM and the orchestra personnel manager. You're trying to listen and advocate and support this musician, and on the other side, you're creating the contracts and you'd be doing a lot of the CBA negotiations. It's interesting sort of those two hats going into that conversation. That's a little bit of a interesting challenge. And so that building my awareness around that made me think, maybe Oberlin might be the better fit. And I really was excited to work with young people, but now at this collegiate level and work with Tim Weiss and Rafael Jimenez, great conductors over at Oberlin and a lot of great young people. And I really enjoyed working with young people. Again, right? At that point, that's what I was really starting to enjoy. So I decided to go to Oberlin and worked there for 4 years. And my goodness, what a magical experience. So many great artists there. And it's such a beautiful community and close-knit community, for better and worse, I'll say, because there's, I don't know, at the time, I think you would have 8,000 people in the city, and that's when the students were there. So it wasn't that big. And I'm a city guy, so
from Hollywood.
Yeah, right. I've lived in LA and Tampa and Austin and Philadelphia, all these big cities, and to now go to a small place, it was the other side of the coin, But I made some really great friendships and relationships there, and I think honestly because there is less to do. You actually grew strong relationships because you ended up hanging out with your friends and colleagues that much more.
Yeah.
Sure, you could drive 40 minutes to Cleveland or fly wherever you wanted if you truly wanted to get away or do some amazing things. Not that you couldn't do it at Oberlin, but there's just more to do.
Yeah.
And so, I built some friendships from there with Michael Roost and Ryan Miller, all these folks who and other great artists and human beings that to this day, they're some of my best friends, and they'll be at my wedding one day if and when I get that opportunity. But I also realized that I may not want to live in Oberlin for the rest of my life. Not anything against the city and the college, which I very much enjoyed, and would love to go back and visit as many times as one would like. But I missed being in a larger city. I missed being able to work with historically marginalized communities. I missed being able to see family and friends. One thing that we sort of spoke before we started the podcast was there was a time for about, I don't know, maybe 10, 13 years or something where I didn't live within the same state, let alone city, where I had family, so I would have to travel. And so I started looking at other opportunities to grow. And coincidentally, there was, I think the title was Education Project Manager or something, I'm forgetting now at this point, was available to work with YOLA, with the LA Phil. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is exactly what I want to do. This is the community I want to be able to support. It's working with young people. It's in music, it's with the orchestra that I grew up with, it's in soundtrack, I have family there, all these reasons why, this would be the dream job at that point in my life. And so, again, went through the whole process of interviewing. I think I had a Skype interview and then phone calls and then in person and, all these different, it was a very thorough interview process with different departments I think I even met with the CEO briefly at the time.
Wow.
I was taken aback a bit. I was like, "You're doing this for every position?" And I was like, "Why am I meeting with all these
Yeah.
great individuals?" It was a privilege, right?
Yeah.
In any case, I eventually was offered the position, and the rest is history. And I've been working with YOLA now for the past, it'll be 6 years in May. Yeah.
That's amazing. And just hearing the whole overview of all these different positions that you were able to hold and, the different communities you were able to get involved in different cities, in different areas of the country. And what I feel really inspired by from your story is how you describe this process of falling out of love with something and falling in love with something else. And I think a lot of times I feel like the perception when someone goes into arts administration, especially, it's thought of as, oh, they couldn't make it in music, or, like they weren't able to win enough auditions, or, it can have that perception sometimes, or that it was a second choice. So I think it's really cool to hear you talk about how you fell in love with it and how YOLA was literally the dream job.
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool for, especially young musicians who maybe feel like, oh, a solo job, a career performing is the only thing that would, be satisfying or is the only dream job. But to realize actually like that dream can shift and it can change, and that's okay. And even if there are people along the way who might not understand that, or like you were talking a little bit about with Ricardo Morales, how it took maybe a little bit of time to make the connection that, oh, actually this is where he's shifting towards, and that's cool, and I'm going to support him as a person and watch him follow that different dream, even though it's maybe different than what it was to start with. I think that's a really important just pathway. And I really appreciate you drawing it out, because I think that's a large motivation behind why I wanted to start this podcast and just share how dreams and pathways in the musician's career can shift, and there can be reasons for that are deliberate or not. But it's really cool that for you it was deliberate, and that you were able to chase this new found passion, and it doesn't take away anything from your performance background and the education and training you received. And I'd be really interested to hear maybe in a bit about parallels between that, how you pull on that musical background and training and what you do now. But yeah, I just wanted to raise that because I think, like, yeah, you're living your dream job right now, and how amazing is that?
Very, very fortunate. Very, very fortunate. And I wouldn't be here if it weren't for many other people. Many other people who helped guide me, shape me, support me, all the teachers, all the mentors, and all the experiences, all the work experiences, and busting your butt. I mean, hey, like, again, I think I said it earlier, your work speaks for itself. And so, being able to cultivate relationships, being passionate about what you do, not being a jerk and being great to work with, all these things are helpful in folks deciding whether or not they want to take you on to their team, right? But to help, I think, answer one of the questions you may have raised when you were just speaking was some of those parallels, right?
Yeah.
100% it's helpful and it's there. So in my current role, I'm senior manager with YOLA, and what that means is I help operations, personnel, and programming across our 5 sites. I get to help lead a couple of our program managers at YOLA Torres in Inglewood, our ensemble librarians, our private lesson coordinators, our instrument coordinators, and helping shape, my goodness, having that experience of working with young people and being in that teacher in the room and working on curriculum and working on adjudication and working on preparing for those auditions. It's incredibly helpful when shaping a program, when helping guide teachers and the program managers that are hiring those teachers, and thinking about what type of professional development opportunities we're going to have for our teachers and our staff, and what pathways we're going to build for our young people who want to go into music or who don't want to go into music, right? You know, with YOLA, it's not about making the next professional musician. You know, it's about, okay, how do we use music as a vehicle, right? To really create this positive social change, and how can we serve our young people holistically? You know, we are very fortunate to work with such great partners, with Heart of Los Angeles, for example, at OLA, Camino Nuevo Charter Academy for YOLA Camino Nuevo. We have a Harmony Project as well at Expo, and many other partners and donors that help support us to serve our students holistically. So a young person can not only have access to an instrument and free music education or free private lessons, but with our partners, they have access to academic support. They have access to, maybe they could utilize some mental health support. Maybe there's some food insecurities that we can help support that young person and their family. Because sure, it's quite the privilege to be able to study with an LA film musician or one of our teaching artists for free. You know, an LA film musician, they can charge hundreds of dollars for that one lesson, right? And our young person might not be able to take advantage of that opportunity because of other challenges they're needing to overcome. And so it's so rewarding to work with such a large community of people who very much care about investing in our young people, and just having, I guess, more resources to prepare them for whatever career they might want, whether they go to a community college, a trade school, a university, an Ivy League, whatever it may be. And we've had young people go into all those different schools and all types of careers, you know? And we just want to make sure we can support them. You know, I volunteer with Heart of Los Angeles, one of our partners, in helping mentor those who are going into college, right? I needed it when I was a young person, and now I help them, support them with their essays and with their college applications. And I'm so happy that they have that, because that is something that I personally needed, you know? So it's really great to be in that type of work, to have so many brilliant people. Gosh, our director, Camille Delaney McNeil, love her. Gaudi Sanchez, Alsha Cabrera. There's so many great people in the learning department, in YOLA, with our partners, Tony, oh my goodness, at OLA. When there are challenges, when you have those rough days at work, it helps to move you forward when you're truly passionate about what you're doing, and when you're around great people. That helps you get through those tough times, whether it's at work or maybe even outside of work in your own personal life. And to be able to have folks who embrace ideas and stand on pillars of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and supporting that in every step of the way within our programs, it's very inspiring, and it's a privilege. Yeah, I've grown a lot in these past 6 years, and I think a lot of that is also due to the people I've been inspired by. I'll be honest, when I first got the job and I started, just being surrounded by all these great ideas and creatives and folks who, in a way, I was like, man, it's a little intimidating, honestly. I'm like, oh my goodness, like, gosh, I need to step it up. Yeah. And I decided to take that and turn it into a positive. I decided to say, you know what? Okay, how can I invest in myself? How can I be a better servant leader or better serve my community by investing in my own personal growth and my own knowledge and my own artistry? And so I started looking into professional development programs, both inside the LA Phil and out. And Lenny Borstein, who's, she was with LA Phil for about 40 years. She is a beacon of hope. She's incredible. I love her. She was very instrumental in being a mentor, especially in my first couple of years with LA Phil. Thank you, Lenny. You'll always be a mentor to me. she helped guide me to different organizations like Arts for LA County Department of Arts and Culture. She just, she would send me like, hey, you should look into this program. It might be something of interest, because I had mentioned to her that I had interest in growing. And those were really helpful in helping me understand more about arts organizations as a whole, small, large, all the different departments. The Centennial Leaders Program, which was built for the LA Phil. It almost, I guess it would be sort of comparable to like the Essentials program for orchestra management with the League of American Orchestras. It's like when Simon Woods was our CEO, he sort of, I think, helped build that. And that was really helpful for me to just be in the room with all these senior and executive level individuals who could speak about the organization and what its mission, vision, and values are, and what their goals are for each department, and how we all work in collaboration. That was very helpful for me to learn, so I knew how to be a better arts administrator, to be a better leader, to be a better mentor, to help those who I support overcome whatever challenges they had in their way. So working with Arts for LA in particular and their Arts Advocate program, it's quite wild after doing some work with them. And I think I was an MC for one of their events, the State of the Arts Summit, and soon after, their board president asked me if I might want to join their board. And I had a little bit of that thought in my head, like, who, me?
Yeah,
like,
imposter
yeah,
syndrome.
that imposter syndrome, where I was like,
yeah.
what, me? Like, they're like, yeah, actually you, would you like to join our board? And I said, I've never been on a board before. I don't know. They're like, don't worry. We'll bring you in with open arms. We'll help guide you. We can pair you with a mentor. And I said, okay, thank you. And so I got invited to work with Arts for LA. And most recently, I've been especially working closely with their Equity and HR committee, which I'm very fortunate to work with. But all these things help me understand what it might take to maybe lead an organization one day.
Yeah.
Which at this point now, I think if I were to continue to invest in myself, I do hope that maybe one day I can do that. Maybe it's, I don't know, 5, 10, 20 years down the road, who knows, but would love the opportunity to just continue to create an even larger impact in serving our communities with nonprofits like the LA Phil and YOLA, especially, and within the LA Phil and Arts for LA. So,
yeah. I'm really struck just through you sharing parts of your journey by the impact of mentors in your life. And I love how you are giving people shout outs and the gratefulness that you have for them. And yeah, just the importance of that impact that you're really showing and sharing in your journey. And then how you're now taking on those roles of being a mentor and really, I feel this sense of a lot of things that you didn't have when you were growing up yourself, and opportunities that maybe, you weren't able to have, now being parts of programs and organizations to offer that to students now, and really taking like your background and your experience to shape those kinds of programs, to offer incredible things like free music instruction and even holistic training for young students. I mean, it's really incredible the work that is being done through the LA Phil with YOLA, and that you're really spearheading and having a big part in, and just being able to see how it's come back around, like all of your background and experience and your journey to now. If there's a piece of advice that you wanted to share with, I'm wondering, for students in YOLA or young music students, especially in, music, the industry is a difficult career. And so for those who are particularly interested or potentially interested in entering that field for themselves, how are you speaking to them about it? How are you approaching your role as a music educator to build up musicians going into that field?
I think there are general ideas that I enjoy passing on, and then there are other ideas that I might share that are very specific to the pathway they might take. So I'll give you some examples. So if someone wants to go into performance, I might share what that life could look like and what it might take to get into that role. You know, I might share with them what type of pathway that could look with regards to the colleges, the summer music festivals, the private lessons, the amount of practice they need to do, reading they should have, amount of coffee conversations, let alone lessons they should take with these teachers, speak with other peers who are already in college studying to go in there, you know, like really try and pair them with all these potential mentors to them to just offer advice, because I think that's incredibly important, and give them the realization of what it might cost them too, with regards to finances and with regards to time and sacrifice. So that's important. But in, you know, there's general advice too that I could offer with the importance of time management is incredibly important. I think the more the bigger position you have the opportunity to take, the more responsibility you have, the less time you have to have free, I guess, because you're so busy. And so at this point, I mean, I even put in my own calendar, here's the times that I'm going to work on emails. Here's the time that I'm going to be in meetings. Here's the time that I'm going to eat lunch. Here's the time that I'm going to go and do a personal thing. Like I literally build it into my calendar, or else it's too easy to double, triple book or what have you. So I'll often talk about time management. I'll often talk about trying to invest in reading and writing, especially because your voice matters. And I've seen how at times not being able to articulate who you are and what you're passionate about can sometimes stunt your growth. So I often might share different TED Talks or public speaking tips, or just books that are a little bit around self-help, I guess, so to speak, but they're really around finding your voice and helping you find your artistry or your purpose. So I'll share some books with them and some different things around that, or videos. And then I just try and also help remind them to be extremely flexible. You know, think about what you can control versus what you can't. And, you know, trying to work hard on how you manage your emotions. It's very tough to do, especially in an artistic world that can be more subjective than objective. And talking about that. So those are some of the more general things I might share. And honestly, I really just try and pair them with someone else who's not me, who is either going through the pathway that they see themselves wanting to do, or is already in that role. And that could also mean if they don't know what they're doing or want to do, honestly, pair them with someone who's been through that, right? Who has said, hey, listen, I've been there. I maybe took a year or two away from school to find out what I wanted to do. Hey, I changed career paths. And so it helped them understand that it's okay to not have your whole life figured out. It's okay to change career paths. It's okay to do that. And that you can still be extremely successful years down the road, even though you didn't know what to do right then and there. I think it's so important for folks to just know that, because it seems like even the younger you get, you just have all this pressure to succeed, and especially with having access to so much knowledge, and social media out there, for better and worse, maybe shows you, it can be competitive at times, even more so when you see it on your phone, you know, and everyone's sort of maybe sharing all these successes, and in a way you sort of maybe look as though, oh, should I be as successful as these others, or should I be comparing myself to others? And obviously that can be an unhealthy thing, right? And so sort of talking to them about this. These are the things that I try and generally give advice about, versus what I might try and maybe guide them to people who I think might be able to help them with whatever career path they might want to pursue.
Yeah, yeah. And I love how tailored that is and how that's thinking so thoughtfully about the person as a whole person. And I think good advice for anybody to take on just in general, look out for mentors who are going down pathways that you're interested in and get advice and wisdom from them. And you have shared so much advice and wisdom, even just in this whistle stop tour of your life and your career and the amazing work that you're doing. I wish I could ask you even more about YOLA, but we're including a video at the end of this episode sharing some more about the work. So please go check that out and just check out more about what YOLA is doing because it really is amazing. I always end my episodes with a quick rapid fire question and answer section.
Oh, here we go.
You're up for it.
Yes, please, let's do it.
Amazing. So who's your favorite composer?
Mozart.
Very nice. Favorite piece of classical music?
Mozart Grand Partita.
That's a great one. Favorite movie soundtrack?
Oh my goodness.
I love these reactions. Yeah, I know. They're very hard questions.
That is difficult.
Coming from Hollywood.
Can I just say John Williams?
Yeah.
Because he's so
Every
many great
one.
sound. John Williams.
Perfect. What is your go-to resource for music educators, if you have one?
I would say Bob Duke, Dr. Bob Duke. Yeah, his writing and his teaching is incredible. We've had him work with our teachers. He's worked with teachers at Colburn. He's worked with a lot of professionals across the field. Yeah, he's incredible.
A book you keep coming back to?
Oh, wow. A book I keep coming back to. There's a few, so now I have to think about which one I want to choose. I'm going to go with The Inner Game of Tennis. Because I've gone through that a few times, and there's different things I learn every single time, and I end up often mentioning this in music education, whether it's with young people or educators. Yeah, that's helpful. And myself. It's a helpful reminder of that voice within you that can be both positive and not at times. Yeah.
A musician you really admire? And why?
Ricardo Morales. Easily.
Amazing.
That's easy.
Yeah. And then finally, if there was one resource you could recommend, so it could be anything, a book, a movie, podcast, anything that you think would be really beneficial for somebody
your
to check out.
podcast, right?
Well, thank you.
I mean, gosh, yeah. Yeah, I would say, the work that you are doing and others like you who are helping build awareness to pathways for our young people and helping support them in their education, I think is critical and really, really important. Yes, there are other podcasts out there, certainly. But we need to invest in our generation and the next. So that way it's a better world. I know that's what we all do, parents, teachers, we're all doing that. But trying to find a healthy way to do it, to build awareness, is not easy to do.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you in doing this work.
Thanks.
It's why I agreed to do this podcast with you, honestly.
Yeah.
Because it aligns with my values and the work that I do with YOLA and other organizations. So thank you for what you're doing.
Oh, that's really kind. And yeah, I can't thank you enough for coming on, for your willingness to share your story, to share the work that you're doing. If you could leave any final words with listeners, any last piece of advice, you've already shared so much, but any final words to leave with listeners, and then if you could just end by how people could connect with you, with YOLA, and the work that you're doing.
Okay. Wow, quite the challenge. I would challenge you to be a lifelong learner and enter into spaces with an open heart, an open mind, and an open will. How can you access, I guess people share their socials and things. I'm on Instagram, Fuertes. I'm on Facebook. I don't know if folks still use that. I'm on LinkedIn, Fuertes. And my work email is ffuertes@laphil.org. I'd be happy to, if I can be a resource of support in any way, I'd be happy to spend my time with you because, again, I've been very fortunate for folks to just spend, even if it's a half hour of their time with me, that I've learned so much from them. So if there's any way that I can pass on the knowledge that I've attained from all the incredible people I've worked with, I'm more than happy to pass that on. So that way folks have it, and maybe they have fewer challenges along the way because of it.
Yeah. Well, amazing. I'll make sure to link everything in the show notes. And yeah, you've been so generous with your time and just your wisdom and sharing your story. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Orchestrating Your Career podcast, and a big thank you to Fabian for sharing his story along with so much advice. If you enjoyed this episode, then give this video a like and leave a comment below about what struck you the most from hearing Fabian's story. If you're listening on Spotify, it would also be a huge help if you could leave the podcast a review. The resources mentioned in this episode and where you can connect with Fabian and YOLA are all linked below. You can find the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other platforms, as well as get more frequent updates on Instagram. To watch videos of all the episodes and get extra behind-the-scenes content, check out the YouTube channel Orchestrating Your Career. Subscribe so you don't miss anything. Share this episode with a musician or anyone else you think might be interested, and look out for new episodes on the 1st and 15th of every month. Next episode's conversation will be with Dean Jamal Rossi, who was so kind to sit down with me and chat about his time serving as Dean of the Eastman School of Music as he prepares to retire and start a new chapter of his life. Stay tuned for that episode. Until then, here's a video sharing more about YOLA and the important work and mission of this incredible organization. So YOLA, take it away.
In 2007, the LA Phil, inspired by world-renowned conductor Gustavo Dudamel's own training as a young musician, established Youth Orchestra Los Angeles, or YOLA, a program that creates social change through music education. YOLA provides equitable access to high-quality music education for young people across Los Angeles, and serves hundreds more through YOLA national programs that bring together young musicians from across the country.
In music, you have the discipline. You have to listen to each other. You have to create harmony with other instruments. You start to listen differently. And when you apply that in the society, you are a different person. You are a different human being.
Each YOLA program is as unique as the neighborhood it serves. But at their core, they all share in YOLA's key values of close-knit community, collaboration, mentorship, social justice, and a belief in music's special power to change the lives of individuals, families, and communities. What started as a music program for 80 students in South LA today has transformed into a program that is made up of 5 orchestra sites, and year after year enhances the lives of nearly 2,000 musicians ages 5 through 18 across Los Angeles County communities. All of YOLA's sites provide a variety of services, including free instruments, intensive music instruction, academic support, and community building. YOLA also hosts learning programs nationally and serves as a model for dozens of creative youth development activities across the country. Through Youth Orchestra Los Angeles, young musicians are finding their voices, discovering their potential, and creating a symphony of change that resonates throughout the city and beyond.